Hello. You were on mute.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Hi,
How are
how
you?
are you? Good. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me close the door so it looks
Okay.
nicer. Otherwise, you can see my bathroom entrance.
Oh, okay. How's the new place?
It's good. There's a few boxes here and there, but it's getting there. It's like 90%. We completely renovated, so it's sort of still a little bit of a mess, but for the most part, it's almost done. So it's okay. Just hard because we're in a city and we can't do anything, right? So everybody's struggling with that.
Oh.
How are you doing?
Doing okay. Been we've been really quarantining because my daughter was pregnant, then had the
Right,
baby. So we were just seeing her and we were seeing her husband, and we weren't even seeing my younger daughter
right.
because she's a teacher and
Okay,
was in the
that
classroom.
must have been hard.
Yeah. So we were FaceTiming and Zooming and stuff. But
Right.
yeah, so it's yeah, we're fine. I mean, work is interesting. I've got a couple of I've been working for the University of Oxford for 3 years on a long-term project, and
Mhm.
they just hired me for another long-term project. So
Oh,
that
nice.
keeps me going on top of all my other work, which is nice.
Right. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah, yeah. How about you?
Busy, like busier than ever before. Like it's usually I'm very busy during bad times.
Yeah.
Like 9/11, I was crazy busy. This was my best year ever, so I can't complain. It was just a little stressful,
Yeah.
but yeah. And there's a lot of these presentations I'm doing all throughout the next few months, so it's going to be a little, just a lot. But I just thought it'd be good to help the community, and people need stuff. So
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was feel like I'm on Zoom. I'm Zoomified out.
Yeah, we actually did something on Christmas New Year's Eve, where we did we used our instead of using separate Zoom numbers, we just used my main Zoom number, and we had 15-minute intervals where different people signed in. So we had an ongoing party, and whoever was coming in already knew the people that were there, and then they would leave, and the next people would know them, and we did it
Oh,
from
that's really cool.
it was fun. We did it from 6:15 until 12:15, and we had a blast, and everybody on it really enjoyed it. So
So it was just with people for 15 minutes and then somebody else would come on, and would they overlap?
they would
They would
overlap
overlap.
because they
Okay.
knew one another. So
Okay.
that was fun. And then at one
Oh,
point we
cool.
had our best friends on who live in Seattle, and so I texted all the kids and said, we're all on Zoom. Here's the link. So some of the kids came on, and
Oh,
that
good.
was fun too. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So,
And how's your grandchild?
he's wonderful. He's coming to see me tomorrow. And he is a giant. He's probably like 16 pounds already. And
Okay.
he was born almost a nine something. So
Okay.
it's very big. Yeah. And my daughter is so tiny that the doctor just said she couldn't believe that he was inside of her. She didn't
That's
even look
hysterical.
9 months pregnant.
Right.
So
Oh, that's funny.
yeah, yeah,
Well, good, good. Well,
yeah.
congratulations. That's very, very exciting.
It is. It is. Um, so we have 37 people signed up for today.
Okay.
So I will be sending you a check for $350,
Okay.
or I can do
And
PayPal.
and we're gonna do me a favor and time me. So, like, because you want to do some Q&A at the end,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So give me like a 10-minute notice before 5-minute notice before the Q&A. Just say we're about to over for Q&A. Just so if I am running over,
Okay,
because tends to be a little bit of a long presentation, but I tried to cut it down.
okay.
Um,
And
so
I do a little intro first about the Creative
okay.
Roundtable. Then I'll do an intro about you. Hold up your lovely book, and then it was funny because we were discussing something in one of the groups, and we have a new guy in the group, and he goes, "Oh, I have that book. It's great." It's like, yeah, I know. So, yeah, do you want to try to share your screen, make sure all that's working good? And
Sure.
Looks good to me.
Hold on, let me just put it in.
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
So do you want me to do an intro about you, or do you just want to do that?
You could, if you want, doesn't matter. I mean, I usually introduce myself a little bit more, but it's up to you. I mean, you could just talk about personally that you knew me and, that I've spoken before, but I could do the whole intro if you want.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't spend a lot of time introducing myself because I figure people know me already, but yeah, I could do that.
Good. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks for including me in this.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. And I'm going to mention at the very end that if they want to do a little bit of a deeper dive, we're doing it with Fly Female Founders on whatever date that is, February 9th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be a version of this, but they'll be a little bit more extensive and some more workshop-y exercises.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Exactly. We've been doing really well with those workshops, but you never know this year. I just unplugged from, oh well, I only needed for the alarm to go off on the phone. We've been doing really well with those workshops. We've been selling, we only do about 35 people, and we have been selling them out each time, which has been
that's
really
awesome. That's really great.
And it enables us to gift the, let everyone attend the breakfast for free.
Mm-hmm.
So people are going to start coming in now because they know that, and it's up to you. We can let them all in at 12:30, or we can let them in now, chat, or
you can let them in now if they want to chat or whatever.
I will do that.
Plus, if I see any friendly faces, I always like to say hello.
You might see a few. Hi, Nadine. Hi, Nadine. Your hair is long.
I haven't cut it since 2019. Every time I want to get a cut, it's like, well, we're back in lockdown, so yeah, I'll get it next time around.
Yeah. I've decided to not color my hair anymore.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people are doing the whole going gray or letting their hair grow. Like, it's just, we're stuck doing it, so we might as well just accept it.
Well, at first I was trying to do it by myself, and then I just said, you know why? And it's so much softer where it's coming in.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I'm just going gray. I swear I find new ones each week. This online schooling this week it must be like a dozen new grays.
How is homeschooling going?
It's rough. I mean, we were lucky. We got September to December in, and then they extended a week, which was fine. But it's different than the spring. The spring was like, oh, here's some activities, get them done by the end of the week. Now it's like, we have to be here at 9:30 for this class, and then do the work, and then log in at this time for this class. Anyway, and now they've extended it 2 more weeks, and I suspect it'll be longer than that. So yeah, just trying to figure out how to balance everything this week. So I'm glad it's Friday.
My daughter, her school was in person from October 5th until a couple of weeks before Christmas. And then they went to remote, and they're remote until the 14th, I think. But New York City, I think, will shut down again. Yeah. Hello, Amy. You're muted. We'll see it. Everybody who's in the groups knows that I love people to start on time.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was 2 minutes late yesterday, Nancy.
Yeah, and the whole thing about the accountability groups is, do I text people? Is that letting them be accountable? Hi, Christine.
I have a tendency kind of over.
Oh, I see Jen's on too. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Nadine.
Hey, Christine, how are you doing?
I've seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a bit, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it today. I waited until a few hours ago to see if I could accommodate it, and I was like, yes, I'm going for it. So I'm excited.
Go for it, girl.
Oh, I'm so glad it's Friday.
Yeah, what a week.
Yeah, I was supposed to send out an email today, but I was like, this is just not an appropriate time to send an email to people.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
I don't know. There you are, Jen. I have to scroll around to see everyone.
Hello.
We have two Jens on, a Jen with two N's and a Jen with one N. Even though in Jennifer, you both have two N's.
Yes.
So have you guys all seen Emily, I'm sorry, present before?
I think I've seen a recording before. Yes.
Same person, different hair color, probably.
Yeah. I think the last time I saw you was actually in person at in South Norwalk at Carl's co-working.
Oh
space.
yeah. Oh wow, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
Was that more than a year ago?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like I think that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a
That was
great
fun,
talk.
actually. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was fun because actually one of my best friends came to see me speak and she had never seen me speak.
Oh,
So
that's
that was-
great.
so
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
kinda
a
fun
nice
having a
warm
friend in the
little
audience.
group. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of fun.
So
But
we're
then she
gonna
asked a
wait-
stupid question. I was mad at her for asking a stupid question. I think she did that on purpose.
We're going to wait till a couple of minutes after because people do not know that I like everyone to be on time. See, to me, when I grew up, and everyone's heard this story before, my mother said that you are on time if you're early because that way you start when the time frame is.
It's true.
Yeah. I'm going to stop counting people. This is... Hello, everybody. We're going to start in a couple of minutes. We're going to start in a few minutes, everyone. Danielle, you look like you're ready to go skiing.
This is called I have way too much gray and I need to color the sides of my hair. So this strategically hides it.
Oh, okay.
We were just talking about our grays before that.
Yeah. I mean, Nancy's embracing hers and God bless her. I can't get there yet. So
I'm actually going next week to get my hair all silver. Gonna
Really?
change it. Yeah.
Ooh, beautiful. I have
Big-
someone who's
big
reverse
move.
ombre. She's like gray purple into like a dark purple. And it actually sounds bizarre, but it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
I feel like one day that's gonna
Yeah.
be it.
Maybe I'll do that.
There you go.
Yeah, it is it wasn't an easy decision. But
Well, you look gorgeous.
well, thanks.
I like it. It looks good.
It's
I do
just
too.
funny. So is Reggie, are you the only guy on here now? We're all talking about our hair color. Nope, we've got Steve and John. Okay, so we've got other people.
We can talk about my hair if you want to.
Yeah, I have none to speak of, so I'm intrigued.
Well, I always have these conversations with my brother who will talk about how gray I'm going, and I always ask him to turn around so I could see his bald spot. And then my sister-in-law always says, children, you must stop. All right. Should we get started? We should get started. We still have a few people, but I will pay attention to them coming in, hopefully. Okay, I'm gonna record. Oh, I am recording. Look at that. Okay. All right. So I want to welcome everyone to the Creatives Roundtable. My name is Nancy Russo. I'm your host. For those of you who are new here, the Creatives Roundtable is an accountability group and creative community that meets monthly in online groups of 6 people to help you with the business side of your creative business by breaking into your goals, into bite-sized tasks that are manageable, talking through hot topics, and getting feedback from one another. We have an accountability group. Beside the accountability group, we have a closed Slack community. This is where conversations take place daily about work events, questions and answers like printer recommendations, what color your office walls, I'm too busy for this job, who has time. We watched some of the Adobe Max things together, which was kind of fun. Once a month, we have these CR 60-minute events with special speakers, which are free to our community members and 50% off to our Slack members. You're welcome to take a look and join us. Coming up so far in 2021, we have in February, Pivoting to Your Future, What Sets You Apart. In March, LinkedIn Strategy for a Winning Business. In April, Why You Need a Genuine Personality Brand. In May, How TikTok and short form video can elevate your business. In June, 3 steps to uncomplicate your marketing and attract more dream customers. And in July, Canva for creative cloud users. I don't know about that. You'll be getting emails to attend because of your attendance today. You can, of course, opt out of our emails. If you guys could keep your videos on, it would be great. It would help. I don't like presenting to a blank screen. So I met Emily several years ago in a church, 2 Jewish girls in a church. And she was presenting for the AIGA on a very snowy night, and I was really glad that I decided to go. I have since seen her present many times, and I think that she's a fabulous speaker. She wrote this great book. I don't know how many of you have it, but I actually keep it next to my desk. Hopefully if you haven't had it, you'll take a look at it. I will put the link in a recap email. So I'm going to let Emily take it away.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great introduction. I actually always keep my book by my desk because I'm always selling it. I hope everybody's doing well. It's been a very trying week for everybody and for this country, but I love this topic, so I'm hoping we will have some fun today. And so typically the way I like to present is just to tell you my story, the story of my presentation, and then we can take questions at the end. If I'm talking too fast, just let me know. I have a tendency to talk a little fast. I'm a New Yorker, as many of you know. But today I'm going to be talking about positioning and specialization. And as soon as I get my mouse working, we can move forward. Okay, so just a little bit about me. You all pretty much know me. So I have been a business consultant for 30 something years, and I started my career as a graphic designer. So my running joke is I know kerning, and I work with principals of design firms, helping them elevate their business to the next level, usually with the principals of the firms and with people across the country, really helping them look at their staffing, their organizational structure, their processes, their strategy, their new business strategies, all kinds of things. And I actually really, really love what I do, which is amazing. So it's great to be in a profession that we all pretty much love. And I get to work with you guys, which is great. I love creatives, right? So it's the best clients in the world. I really have the best job in the world. So that's me. And before we get started, I want you to just imagine you're a client. Just imagine you're a client. I would make you close your eyes, but I don't think you need to do that. And you're going to like design sites, to the websites of designers to find out which design firm should you work with. And probably what you're going to see is something like this, which is this gobbledygook. And they're all written beautifully, but if you start reading them all together, and that's what clients do, though, if they don't know you, if they're not coming through referrals, they're finding you through your site or through other ways, they're just kind of reading this stuff that basically is written beautifully, but it sounds all the same. You know, we build brands, we're a brand agency, we're a creative digital consultancy, you know, we're obsessed with designing better brands. It's always about brands. And, you know, it sounds wonderful, but it means nothing. It has nothing. It doesn't say anything about what makes them different. And so today's presentation is really trying to get at the root of what makes you different, and what makes you stand out, because there's just too many of us, right? Millennials are very entrepreneurial, and when they leave college, they mostly start their own firm, or they start pretty quickly. So the amount of competition has just significantly increased, significantly. And So it's much, much harder to compete because there's just so many firms that we can compete against. And I'm sure you've all experienced this. Like, I'm assuming a lot of you are much more small firms, like 1 or 2 person firms. But you might be competing against the Pentagrams of the world or even larger agencies. Like, and imagine those firms trying to compete against you. They're like, we can't even compare. So it's really hard for clients to select firms if they don't know anybody. And so that's why they go for referrals, which is great. But that's not necessarily the best way always to get business, because then you're allowing the people who already know you to direct your business, and you really want new clients so that you can take control of your business. So this is all around making sure that you're differentiated and that your positioning is solid. So the first thing I always like to talk about when I meet my clients is that I essentially think, and this is a very strong point of view, and I outline this in my book, so forgive me for those who have read it, but I'm a real big believer that this industry is sort of divided now. We're either executional firms, and those firms are like just doing the stuff. The client asks for something, we do it. They say we need a website, you go do it. It's basically kind of churn and burn. It's a lot of work. You're busy a lot, but you're doing smaller projects. Very rarely are you doing strategy or branding. Sometimes you'll do it, but for the most part, we're just kind of churning out a lot of stuff. And it might be really good design, but it's not valued by the clients. It's just a lot of stuff. And that's great. To be an executional firm is actually where all the work is, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to just get done. And so it's not bad to be an executional firm, but it's a very different model than being a strategic firm. And so the first thing, and being a strategic firm is, it could be that it means it has nothing to do with size, but it does have to do with the quality of your team and the quality of the people on your team. So when you're executional, you should just have really good people that are kind of executional. There might be some designers, and you'll have some programmers, and you'll have all kinds of different people supporting you. But strategic firms, everybody that's in their job is an expert. So even if they have production artists, they are the best production artists. They're advisory to clients. And they're much more than just a pair of hands, but they're really giving clients support and advice and consultation throughout the process. And most design firms are sort of in between executional strategy. And it's very hard to be both because you have different kinds of needs in terms of your staff. You send different messages to the client. And the thing is with clients, so I sometimes make global generalizations, so bear with me as I make many of them during today's presentation. But because I've worked with so many creatives, I can guarantee that almost 90% of you are like what I'm describing, which is that, I forgot my train of thought about that. But clients, oh, I know what I was gonna say. Clients will give you like their branding or their websites and really important projects, right? But then you keep them on as clients and they love you and they want to work with you and they give you lots of stuff. And so you end up developing either retain a relationship or you're just doing a lot of stuff for them throughout the year. And then your relationship sort of changes. And they will never, very rarely think about you for the more strategic, when they need to rebrand or do a new website, they begin to think of you more as executional, even if you started out as strategic. So it's just a way to identify where do you want to be and to create a model that is based on that. I think it's very hard to be all things to all people, especially when you're a small firm. And so my point of view is that you should land somewhere and really feel good at where you will land and really sell that. So executional firms provide the strategy, clients usually provide the strategy, the creative brief. They're usually giving a little bit more direction. Excuse me. Most execution, if you are in the execution space, you'll have a lot of clients art directing. Oh, I'm losing my voice. Hold on. Maybe I'm talking too fast. Clients will be much more directive. They'll have existing and tightly crafted brand standards. So you might not have a lot of flexibility in the creative direction you go into because they'll give you very tightly crafted brands. You'll do a lot of maintenance. They'll ask you to do maintenance. These are the clients that you have to decide if you want, right? So a lot of my clients, sometimes they'll take on retainer clients for the maintenance of sites. And I'm always asking them, are you really a site maintenance firm? Now, I understand that sometimes pays the bills, but once you start doing that kind of executional work, it's very hard for clients to think of you in another way. So just think about that. And usually executional firms, either you charge hourly rather than a fixed fee, not always. And it's very much, the big point I want to say is that usually executional firms are reactive business development. They're just taking on work that it's coming through. It's either through SEO or through just anybody that's calling them. And that a lot of times when you look deeply enough, they're really kind of unqualified leads. But strategic firms are really sought after. They are sought after for an expertise, for an industry knowledge, and they're valued for that insight. They're not valued because they can do anything and everything. They're valued because they know an industry, they know a particular type of work, and that's what they're hired for. And that's where the money is. So it's a lot less turn and burn. It's much more fewer projects, but much more higher value projects and kind of more important projects and ones that you possibly want in your portfolio. These firms that are more strategic are less generalist. They're not doing everything for everybody, but they're doing a few things for a few people. So they might have a far less fewer clients, but much more valuable clients. And those clients still can be in the long term with them, but they might not be doing executional stuff. They might be doing more strategic stuff. So clients like that will not call you every time they need an email blast or need some social media post, but they will call you when they're thinking about their brand and how they can elevate it. So for instance, I have a client right now that does mostly brand and brand strategy, and that's all they do. But they still work with the client on a quarterly basis to make sure that they're staying on track with their brand and to elevate it and to do the high level communications that are really important related to the brand. So they still have an ongoing relationship. They just do less stuff and get paid a lot more and are valued more. And they're recognized as thought leaders. And they have metrics and ROI to prove it, right? A lot of times we don't have the metrics. That's because you're not asking or that you're an executional firm. So just think about that, whether you want to be executional or strategic. But it's really hard to be all things to all clients. And most designers want to be all things to all clients because they're like, I can do it, right? I love doing cool shit. I can design anything. And that's true, right? I get that. The designers can design anything. Clients do not understand that. Clients want to know that you're an expert in either what they need or who they are as an industry. So I always look at this as another way to look at a firm. And I've developed this maturity model. And for those of you who have seen me speak, you might have seen this. I always continue to change it a little bit, but essentially and there's no good model or bad model. So I don't want to make it sound like at the low level versus the high level. But a lot of firms are either service providers or advisors. They're sort of at this kind of smaller end of the, not a low end, but just at this end of the model, which is that they're much more, again, executional, and they're executing clients based on the client's request, executing work based on the client's request. They're providing a few options, but they're really not being kind of value added. So I want you to think about where you are on this model, and the relationship you have with the client is very different. So when you're at the service advisory level, it's very much a monologue. The client says, I need this, you go do it. Or you might give them a few options. But when you're at the higher level, it's much more trust. They're like, we have this problem, we have this need. How can we fix it? Rather than saying we need a website, they're saying, here's our challenge. And then you might advise what they might need to do, right? So rather than saying, I need a logo, they should be coming up to you and saying, well, we don't even know who we are as a firm. We want to position ourselves differently. So you would do a much more deeper dive and really think about strategy rather than just going right to just executing a logo. So, and it's a much more of a dialogue, it's a negotiation, it's much more of a relationship rather than you're a vendor. So usually a service provider is really considered a vendor or a contractor, where somebody at the higher or innovative level, a brand builder level, is much more trusted partner, a strategic partner, right? So those are the Collinses of the world. Sometimes not even, I wouldn't even say the pentagrams, honestly. And there's very few people that are at this level. Most firms are at that service provider and advisor level. And what I would recommend is decide where you are on this model, be the best you can at that level, and then you can move up. But only can you move up when you're really good in one area. And you can't leap from service provider to brand builder. And you can't be, I personally don't think you can be all things to all people. So many of my clients do develop brands, but they're also service providers. And so they really, at the end of the day, most of their work is at the service provider level, or the clients begin to think of them as a service provider level. So now I'm going to talk about the dirty word that many creatives hate, which is specialization. So first I'll talk about being a generalist. There's a lot of pros, right? So it allows more flexible, nimble work approach. Like you can do anything for anybody and you could just switch and it's less boring, right? So you're not just doing one thing. It's less dependent on industry trends. It's, it's just offers your team morale is usually higher when you're a generalist because they want to do cool work. So a lot of designers get bored very easily and they want to do a lot of different interesting things, including many of you. So there are some really good pros to it, but there are many cons as well. There's definitely, there's less, because there's so many design firms, there's much more competition. And that decreases your win rate because you're not differentiated in any way. You're competing against many other firms, and unless they trust you and you're valued and you're already a referred source, it's really hard to win these engagements. It's harder to command higher fees because you can't prove your value through metrics and through your specialty. There's every single time you work on a project is an increased learning factor, which a lot of people, I personally love to learn. So, that could be a positive as well, but it's constantly pivoting and changing. And your team might not be as good at changing as you are. So then you are putting a lot of pressure on your team to be all things to all people when they are still learning themselves. It's largely, so this is again about new business, it's largely about who knows you. So the only way you get business when you're a generalist for the most part is referrals. And like I said, that gets your business at some point. It does really, obviously, most of us get our business through referrals. But I generally say that you get about 30% of your business not from referrals, from active relationship building. Because then you're constantly in control of your business and you're directing where you want to go and who you want to work for. So as a generalist, you often have less control over the direction of your business and you end up in places that you didn't expect because you had this big gorilla client. Like a lot of times when I work with my clients, one of the reasons they always hire me is because they got to this place. They were generalists, they were doing really well, but they level set it. They were not expanding their client base. Their work was becoming more executional. They ended up having like gorilla clients that were dominating their business. And that's exactly when I come in oftentimes because they're doing okay, but they're not going anywhere and they're getting bored. And their business is sort of just level setting. But if you're a specialist, and as you can tell, I'm kind of very much in this direction of recommending that you specialize. There's a lot of pros. You can be differentiated and oversaturated in an oversaturated market. And I've mentioned this before. It's a way for you to stand out. It's the best way to stand out. It allows you to focus on your new business. A lot of my clients, and many of you, I'm curious, we'll maybe take a little poll later. Most creatives do not actively pursue new business for a few reasons. One is they think it's cold calling and it reminds them of, used car dealers, which it's not, and that's a whole other talk. But for the most part, the reason why they don't go to do new business is because they say, oh, I got all this referral, right? But mostly it's because they don't know where to start. Because they're generalists, who do they go after? Because they work with everybody. Whereas if you're a specialist, and you don't even have to be a specialist, and I'll talk about this later, you don't have to even be a specialist externally. You don't necessarily have to say it on your website, although I think it's preferable. It gives you a direction for new business. So many of my clients who don't go after relationships and develop relationships, it's mainly because they don't know who they are and they don't know who to go after. You have many more stories to tell that really the clients can relate to. So you're really speaking their language, the people they know, the industry drivers, the jargon, all their challenges and opportunities. You can really, really speak to their needs and be an expert. Rather than asking a million questions, you really should be knowing them as deeply as they know themselves. And you have a lot more stories. You have case studies, you have metrics, you have a certain defined way of working, so it's much more seamless and efficient. And oftentimes you will have longer term relationships because you are an expert in their industry or in their field. And it definitely, my favorite part is it makes you more money. Honestly, if you're a specialist, you can just command higher fees. So there's a lot of value to that. There are some cons. You might be in like right now, some of my clients, I have one client that did specialize in the running industry. Interesting enough, they do a lot of races, branding of races. They run the races, they do the whole operation side of races. And they work for retail stores that sell racing, sell material like sneakers and stuff to racers. So they completely got destroyed because of this COVID moment. But for most of my clients, usually I do recommend you have 2 or 3 specializations. But there is a risk sometimes of it being heard at any given moment in time. That's why you should kind of be still doing some other work, but you should be specialized to command higher fees and for all the other reasons I just mentioned. It might potentially impact team morale. It doesn't always. Sometimes they can still do equally great work for the same kind of clients, but their work is so different that it does excite them. And it also attracts more senior people who know that specialization is the way to go. Clients may perceive you as stale. So a lot of my clients are like, well, I'm a generalist and they want fresh thinking. But honestly, you still can be a fresh thinker and still be an expert. And very few clients really do think of you as stale. Every blue moon, you're going to look for that person who's like, I don't want to work with people that only work in my industry, which is great, right? They want to look for new things. And that's also awesome. But for the most part, very few clients think that way. There might be a steep learning curve. So as you're onboarding new staff, you're going to have to teach them the industry you're in if they don't know it. So there's just a few cons, but I think the pros outweigh the cons significantly. So there's a lot of excuses I hear from creatives, and I like to just tell them what I hear. The first one is, you want to and you can design anything. After all, design is good design. And I get that. Like, I get that we all can do anything, but clients, again, like I said, do not always get that. And they don't always value that. People, designers say, I'm naturally curious and I always want to learn. So I always want to work with different clients, but there's always different problems with the same types of clients. And there's always something to learn. So I don't think even the learning factor changes when you work in a similar industry. You don't want to be held back. You want to design cool shit. Mostly I hear that. Or they think it's going to affect long-term relationships. Really, just you have to get over all these fears. And really, I want you to just consider specialization. It's not such a bad thing. And actually the firms that do specialize, even the ones that have suffered during this time, they made more money in the past, so they're not suffering financially right now because they've built up bigger savings than my clients that are generalists. There's different ways of specializing, and I'm going to lead you towards one. You can specialize by the type of work. So it could be like, we only do branding, or we only do digital work, we only do websites, or you can even get more specific as we only do apps. We could be a social media firm, so many of my clients might specialize by the type of work. And again, it doesn't mean that they won't do other work, but for the most part, the bulk of the work and the bulk of the relationships they're building are based on this type of expertise that they have. It could be based on a process, although I don't think that works anymore. The more firms that are out there, everybody thinks they have this branded process. Pretty much everybody's process is the same, and it no longer is a differentiator. Sometimes it's around a purpose. Now, this is another thing about designers. You're all really good people. And so you always tell me, this is like my running joke with my family, because every time I'm meeting a new client, almost a design firm that I work with, almost always they are like mission driven, or they work with socially driven firms, or firms that are focused on justice. And all of those are really great, but every designer in the world wants to be doing that. And so no longer can you be a specialist in doing mission driven work. I hate to say this to you, but there's too many of us out there. Almost all design firms say they do mission driven work, and very few have succeeded in landing there and still making good money. There's a few, like Hyperact, people that have been doing it for a long time, who've really built their brand from the day one. But now most firms, because the world has gone to shit in a handbag. That's not the right expression. What is the expression? Anyway, because the world is kind of exploding, we just want to do good work for good people. And the other thing is, honestly, how do you tell the good people? Like nonprofits, yes, they're doing good work, but they're run by a lot of times younger people that don't know what the hell they're doing, right? So they end up being more difficult clients, and the work may even be more art directed because they think they can design, these younger kids. So I personally think philosophy and mission driven is great, but I don't think it's necessarily a specialization anymore. You might have an iconic style, somebody like Louise Feely that is definitely an area to differentiate. But the only thing with that is that they're only coming to you based on your work, and the kind of style of your work. And then you have very little opportunity to develop work that's outside that aesthetic. And that might be comfortable for you. So for Louise Feely, that works, right? For there's certain firms, like I'm thinking of, there's many firms that are in that kind of space that have just a certain style, right? You might base it on business model, like Pentagram has that unique business model that very few firms have. But that's not necessarily something that attracts clients. It might be about a target demographic. I'm kind of loving this lately, where people are focused on just women-driven CMOs or entrepreneurs or CMOs. There's something to that I think works very nicely. I have a client right now that pretty much only works with companies that are at a moment in time. I'll show you this later, but in a moment in time where they're changing their business. And so they only work with the leaders of the businesses who are either being bought out or having some big moment in time that's changed in their business. Personally, I think, and this is where I'm leading you to, the best way to specialize is by industry, right? It doesn't mean you can focus on one industry, but choosing, like, do we work with law firms, or do we work with, and many of my clients have, there's a million different specializations. Like I said, my favorite client was in the running space. I had never heard about that, and they were very successful for a very long time. I, never heard of anybody knowing that. And both of them were runners. It was a great new business opportunity because they knew the community. They were at races. They met everybody as they were running. Even when they met new clients, their best new business strategy was to go on a run with these new clients before they had a new business meeting. Like, it was fascinating. It's just having a difficult time right now, but they'll get back to it. And they're doing some other things that will be great once this moment in time is over. But for the most of my clients that specialize did not suffer during this moment. That was the only client that really did. So I'm a real big believer in specializing by a few different industries. And what I mentioned before is true. There's some areas of specializations that are no longer specialization because it's oversaturated. One of them I said is nonprofit, socially good, mission driven, justice driven, all that, which I love. Again, I think it's all great, but I don't think it's a specialization. Restaurants and hospitality is also kind of saturated market. Everybody wants to do restaurant design because it's the most creative. It's also the lowest paying, and every design firm out there does restaurant work, and you're also competing against students and younger people, and big firms like Pentagrams of the world will do it for free because they want that kind of work in their portfolio. So restaurants and hospitality, I do have clients that are in that and doing very well, but they have to be niche in certain kinds of hospitality. Really, really have to know what they're talking about. My firms that are doing well have been doing it for years. CBD is a kind of new market that I've noticed everybody wants to be in. And so I think that's slowly getting saturated. Every designer wants to be in the CBD market, and they think that's where the trends are. And it is where the trends are. It doesn't mean it's where the money is, but it's also hard to compete because everybody's still now wanting to be in that space. And the word branding, everybody says they're branders. And so I think that being just branding, I do think can be a specialization, but I don't think it's enough. I think that there's just too many of us to just do brand. And also the word branding can mean so many different things these days, right? So let's talk about fame for a second, because I want to, when I talk to my clients about specialization, they're like, there are so many firms that are not specialists and they're doing really well. And they always mention things like Pentagram or Brian Collins or, big names. And that's because these people had built a reputation being public figures and being speakers and being out there. So the clients are coming to them in droves, and they're getting big clients because they're well known. It's those firms, there are firms that can be generalists because they are putting all guns a blazing to externally facing opportunities to build relationships. And unless you're really, really well known, it's very, very hard to be a generalist. So there are going to be, yes, there are firms out there that are successful generalists without a doubt, but usually they're run by somebody that has put a lot of time towards building their reputation and being kind of industry thought leaders across the creative field. And it doesn't mean, so if you're a specialist, a lot of my clients are like, oh, that means I'm going to be bored, I can't do cool work. It does not mean that. And it doesn't mean you can't change. So when you're a specialist, if you don't like what you're doing in 3 years, move on, change it, grow, right? I'm constantly, I'm definitely a specialist in that I only work with small to mid-sized firm. Usually I'm very specific about firms that I work with that are usually they have to have at least 3 people on staff, and anywhere up to 30 people. I don't work with agencies. I'm very specific about who I work with, but it doesn't mean I can't change and grow. Like I did my book and I'm constantly developing new clients and there's lots of opportunities out there. And so I always tell my clients, it doesn't stop you from changing and doing interesting things. You can constantly add new things to your repertoire and your skill set, right? But you have to eventually land somewhere, and then maybe 3-4 years you change and grow. Or if you're doing 3 different kinds of industries, maybe one industry becomes less of what you're doing and you take on new industry. So I just want you to think about that a little bit. But I know most of you are going to say, well, where do I begin? How do I decide what my specialization is? And the first thing is you have to evaluate and define. So I always ask myself these questions, ask my clients these questions. And these are really good questions to ask yourself, even if you don't want to be a specialist, is what type of industries are best represented by your body of work? Because it's very hard to be a specialist if you haven't done any of that work. So you can't just all of a sudden leap. You can. Some of my clients have made the leap to say, I'm going to try to change my life entirely and do something I really want to do, and I want to do something else. But for the most part, I try to like at least of the 3 specializations that they are focused on, to pick one that they have a lot of work in. There's always one you can choose that's new. But the first way to begin is just to look at the work you have. So many clients are like, I don't know if there's anything in common, but if you post it all on a wall visually, or just look at the work, you will find something in common. I never have had a problem where I've looked at my clients' work and couldn't figure out what they could specialize in. You just have to look deeply and be honest and say, what is it that, it might not be an industry, it might be a type of client, like the kind of client you work with is a certain age group or certain gender or certain anything, kind of demographic. Which relationships have the most success for the client, not for you? Where can you prove your value and your metrics? What projects also are you the most passionate about? Because I want you still to love what you do. So I'm not trying to move the love away from you. I want you to still love who you work with. And honestly, my clients that work with like the law firms of the world, they still love their clients because they know that industry deeply and they care about that industry and they just like the clients. So what might be great for you might not be great for somebody else. But look at what you care about besides mission driven. You might want to also look at emerging trends. So like the CBD market was an emerging trend. I don't know if it is enough of a trend right now. So look at emerging trends because the world is constantly changing all the time and you want to look at that. That's a great way to identify new potential opportunities. Also, don't neglect your region. I have a client, Matchstick, in Atlanta, and we repositioned them a few years ago. We developed a new vision statement for them. And one of the things we realized is that they were competing against the big branding firms throughout the country, but they weren't winning a lot of them, even though their work was fantastic. And so we positioned them as the brand powerhouse of the South. We took a stand as just the South because there's not a lot of great branding firms in the South, and that has done wonders for their business. It exponentially changed their brand overnight by just taking a stand as we are the brand powerhouse of the South. And there were a lot of companies, very well-known companies, that were positioned, but were based in the South, but they were national or international companies. So by just saying, we just kind of relating to them from saying that our specialization, not our specialization, but we are most of our clients in the South, there's something to it that they built a community that way. What are your personal, and also there might be things happening in your region. So that was the other thing I was gonna say. So like if you're upstate, there might be some things that are going everywhere. Every region has an emerging industry. So what's happening in where you live locally or where you're working? You might have personal restrictions, so you might not want to travel. So that might limit where your clients are coming from because, well, right now everything's everything's virtual, so it doesn't limit it as much. But in the real world, when we start traveling again, hopefully soon, you might decide. Sorry, I'm having a little renovation. Can you guys hear that? Hopefully they'll stop in a minute.
Very softly. It's okay.
Okay, sorry. It's really hard to tell these guys because I'm on the video all the time. Like, you can't do any work today. I also like to look at your personal passions. I'm always asking my clients, I get very personal with them. Like, what's going on in your life? What do you do on the side? So one of my clients was a tattoo artist on the side. He also was a BMXer. And what we realized is he had all these connections in this kind of underground world of music, and I forgot what the word, I forgot the name, subculture. So he decided to specialize in subculture because that's who his community was. And that also overnight changed his business because he just landed in subculture. And so we looked at like what his passions were and who we knew. I had another client that was a big like home brewer. He loved being a home brewer. He went to all the craft brewery conferences. He didn't do any work in that space. But because he knew the language, he knew how to, grow yeast or whatever you do when you you make beer. And so he just went all to all his friends at these conferences and said, hey, I also am a designer. I'd love to design your labels and do your brand. And he got a lot of work in that space because he knew their industry so well because he cared about it. Right. So I also ask my clients, what's going on in your lives? If you have a life, which most of us don't right now, but when you do have a life, what is going on in your life that you can expand and grow? So don't not look at that. I think that's a really important way because we have a lot of personal connections that we don't even leverage because we just don't think about it. It's like we keep separation of church and state. You also should look at your competition. So once you land on a few spaces, you should look at who else is in that space. What are they doing? What are they saying about themselves? What words do they use? Who are they working for? How many are there in your specialization? So that's why when I was saying mission driven, if you just look up mission driven, you're going to find probably, I want to say, 1 million firms in that space. I'm just joking here, but honestly, so trying to find firm, if there's only 1 or 2 people, it's going to be harder because that means that not a lot of people in that, there's not a lot of work in that space, and that's why there's not many firms in that space. Ideally, you want a specialization where there's maybe 20 of you out there, 25, 30 of you out there. But there might be more as long as you can still be an expert in some way that makes you different. So it might be the size of your team. So you can also differentiate yourself once you land on industry in other ways as well. It could be your type of work. It could be the type of staff you have. It could be your reputation. It could be that you're niche in one specific area of that particular industry. But you want to look at the competition. So you want to really do a due diligence as who's out there and what are they doing. And you really should know your competitors and be friends with them. So I know every other business consultant that works with creatives. We're all friends. We all compete, but we're all such different personalities. We all have different specializations, and we're constantly recommending each other. And so because I realized I was getting a lot of value from my peers, I started getting my clients to call their competitors and introduce themselves. And I kind of forced them to do this. I'm like, you should call them, just introduce yourself. And then they share work and they share stories. And I see so much amazing opportunities because people are like, I've always admired your work. And if I don't win it, I'm so happy you win it. Right. So it's not a bad thing to know your competitors. And I actually think you can learn from them and collaborate. Many of my clients now know each other and compete against each other and help each other out. So, but look at the competition and specifically who they're working for, where are they appearing, where are they writing, where are they speaking, what are they doing? So I'm always paying attention to all my consultants and where they're speaking. And I'm hearing about conferences that I've never heard of before that maybe want me as a speaker. And so I'm always looking at what else my competitors are doing, what else can I do to, be at the similar level as they are. And to just compete fairly. And again, you want to look at how many firms are in your specialization. And the big thing about specialization, and this is why I love it, is you should research the industries and find out where are those people that you're trying to reach? Where did they go? They always congregate somewhere. They're always talking to each other, right? So where do they go? Are there associations that they join? And I am telling you, there's an association because I've been doing research in this space. I just launched a new service where I will research your specialization for you and find these opportunities for you. And associations, there's an association for it's called Bacon Growers of America. Like if there's an association for bacon growers, there is an association for everything. And I'm amazed how many associations. There's associations of, even if I have a client that specializes in the food industry, not in restaurants, but in the food, in manufactured food. And there's specializations within that for mushroom growers. It's crazy. So you can find an association. Those associations have websites, they have conferences, they have meetings. They would love to have an expert talk about branding in their industry. Conferences, where are your clients speaking? Where are they attending? Events, where are they congregating? What are they reading? Publications online. There's meetups, there's local, and there's podcasts. There's a podcast for everything as well. So once you know where you want to land, all these are great places to meet clients and to identify who's trending, who's might be a potential client to introduce yourself to, and to even support the clients you're in, just the clients you know, to support them at these events. So whenever my clients speak, I'm always in the front row, supporting them, being the friendly face, and they love that. When I speak, my clients come to hear me speak, even though they know everything I'm about to say, because they want to support me, and seeing that friendly face makes me want to work with them even more because they're supporting me, right? So a lot of my clients have said they've built business simply supporting their clients. So the best thing about specialization, the best thing is that you will be able to find them so much more easily, and they all talk to each other. And then you have a story to tell. Once you decide where you're landing, how do you move there? Because that's always very hard. How do you make that shift from a generalist to a specialist? And so what I like to do is really make a list. I'm a big list fan. Like, what are the things that I need to change? And most of my clients are like, oh, I have to do a new website. That's like the first thing they leap to. And the new website is always like, it takes them 2 years. And for 2 years, they're not doing anything but doing their website. And then by the time they get their website up, they're bored of the website and they have to redesign it. So it's kind of a vicious circle. So it might not be that you need an SLA at first. The first quick win is a website. That might be a long-term win. Maybe the first thing is simply changing your tagline, right? Or getting a CRM tool, or just being more prominent on social media. So I want you to think about make a list of all the changes and then prioritize those changes by this graphic. So there's some things that have high impact and low effort, easy to do. CRM tool is one of the best things you can do when you're starting to do new business and you're starting to position yourself, is to just get all your clients and all your contacts in one place, organize them well by industry, have a way that can capture your emails so that you have a new business tool. That's a very easy thing to do. It takes very little effort, and it's an immediate win. There might be things that have high effort, like it's a lot of work, like a website, but it will have high impact. So you want to be able to have a bunch of different work in each of these buckets. But if it has no impact and no effort, maybe you don't do it at all.
15
right?
minutes.
So 50 minutes. Okay, good. We're almost done. So we're perfect timing. So many clients ask me, well, when, where, and how do I launch this new positioning? The first thing is to decide the timing. It doesn't have to be now. It could be in a year. So many of my clients, especially the younger the ones that are sort of smaller or really new to this idea, I often say, let's just, for the next 2 years, have the goal that we'll be an expert in 2 years. So we are going to do the efforts now in the next 2 years to build an expertise, to go to those communities that we want to work with and build relationships so that in 2 years we can say we're experts because we have attracted some clients. But some of my clients can immediately launch because they already have that expertise. They just didn't know it and didn't take a stake in the ground. It doesn't have to be public facing. Many of my clients are really afraid of saying we are a specialist in this one industry and sometimes that will scare away your existing clients. So they might do a softer approach where they might just say, we do this and this. And I'm going to show you examples of all kinds of specials. I constantly keep track of all the positioning I love and hate. So I'm going to show you some examples of that. Some people do it really well where they say, we're an expert in this, but we also do these other things. And that's perfectly okay. You should decide who's driving the change. It shouldn't be all on your shoulders because it'll never get done. If it's all on one person's shoulders, it'll never get done. Just have to make a plan and just do it. A lot of times it's just about doing it. Most of my clients just don't do this stuff. They get distracted by the latest kind of fire or the next project. So you have to decide who you are and where you want to go. So that requires a mission, a vision, you're having your finances in order, the kind of type you work, kind of clients you're going to work for, all kinds of things. So I do business planning retreats with all my clients. Every year, you should look at this. Look at your business holistically. Where am I now and where do I want to go and how do I get there? Every year, you should do this. And you don't need somebody like me to do this. You could do it yourself. You could do it with your team. But it's a very cathartic exercise, and it keeps you constantly changing and growing as a firm. Oh, sorry. That was weird. The bullets came out weird. Okay. You should pick 3 to 4 areas. It's hard to land on just one because that is very limiting. They don't have to all relate to each other. They can be 3 completely different things. It's okay. It's no big deal. It might be a little harder to phrase it that way, but there's always something that's unifying. I typically say you should have 1 or 2 that are existing specializations that you already have a bulk of work in, or at least 3 projects in. 1 could be new, and 1 can be fun. So it could be mission driven if it's fun or cool. It could be restaurants. Like, it's just something that you do just for fun. I absolutely think you should all have something that you do that is just morale boosting. You might, of the 3 different firms, there might be some sort of overarching theme, like hospitality, wellness, luxury. A lot of my clients will look at like the bulk of their work and say, what's kind of the overarching theme? That's hard to do personally. You might need an expert to look at that work, but really look at your work holistically to say, what is the general themes here? Is it who I'm working with? Is it the type of client? Is it the type of contact I'm working with? You should decide on the timing. It should be driven by you. A lot of my clients are like, oh, can you do this? Or can I hire a writer to do this? Or it's something that it's your firm, it's your job. I also don't believe in hiring writers to write your positioning, because if you read, and this is why when my first slide, it ends up with this copy that sounds beautifully written, but means nothing. But the copy that's written by the partners or by the principals of the firm sound more authentic, more passionate, and more direct. So write it yourself, and then you can get a writer to edit it and make it the same. So don't avoid writing the copy. And because the other thing is, a lot of my clients will like hire a writer, and the writer is actually also developing their positioning. You should, if you're going to hire a writer, give them very specific messaging that you want to include. Just be a risk taker. So being a specialist takes a lot of risk. And honestly, if you're a business owner, you have to be a risk taker. It's one of the components of a good entrepreneur. You have to be patient. It takes a while. And you have to be able to say no, because you are going to have a lot of clients that still want to work with you. And then you have to decide which ones fit your specializations and which ones you're taking on that don't fit your specialization, but have other added benefits. This is my favorite quote. I just read this, and I'm living and dying by this now, because so many of my clients are change adverse. We can't have change without loss. Which is why so often people say they want change, but nonetheless stay exactly the same, because they're really afraid of loss. So I love this quote. It really has driven a lot of my clients to really rethink the idea of change, because you are going to lose some things along the way, but then you're going to have amazing things that happen away as well. Like, I'm sure many of you have had this experience where you lost a client and you're like, oh, it's a big client, I'm never going to survive from this. And all of a sudden 3 amazing clients come out of it for no reason. The universe just sort of said, hey, you have free time. We're going to give you some amazing clients. I never see that not happen. Honestly, most of my clients always, when they have a bad moment in time, something amazing happens. And if you're parents, I'm sure you're saying this all to your kids. So I've collected all this positioning language. I will just go through it real quickly, because I wanted you to, I don't have to read it to you. You can read it. This is more gobbledygook. Look, again, beautifully written, says all the same stuff, right? We want to help inspired companies make amazing products and services. We work with leaders to craft their brands, maximize ROI. You know, it all sounds like that. And if you're a client, you're like, I don't know what that means. But they're somewhat better. Like this one I really like, specializing in brand identity. So they're saying exactly what they do. There's no like fluff here. It's just like, we do these things for these types of clients. Yes, it's not written as beautifully as it could be, but it's very succinct. This is what are our deliverables, and this is who we work with, right? So I have another client that did a lot of socially good companies. And so when we started looking at their work, what we realized is a lot of the firms had to do with meaningful investment. They worked with a lot of finance firms who were kind of changing the world of finance into be much more economically, better for the world. And so she took a leap into, and there's words for this around meaningful investment and impact finance. I didn't even know there was a word for that industry, impact finance. So after doing some due diligence, we realized that was a space for her. Client who specializes in craft and food and beverages with a passion for community. These are good, but they are a lot around nonprofits, but not bad. They're better. right? These I think are much more well-defined. This client, instead of just saying they work for restaurants and hospitality, they work for culinary entrepreneurs. I kind of love that. So people looking and say, oh, okay, that's what I am. You know, this is the client I was talking about that is in the running space. And if you look in the copy in the copy in the italics, what I love is they say this: we occasionally go off trail and work with athletic brands and other businesses in fitness and wellness. So they're saying we do mostly running, but we do other stuff. I kind of love this. I had a client that did do a lot of mission-driven work, and they absolutely refused not to. So what we did is looked at the work more deeply, and we realized what their work was based on is that they had this kind of grassroots art activism that was a big component of their work. So we want to take a stake in the ground and say we did that. We work for, you know, causes that we believe in, but we have an advertising background, which is different than a lot of creatives. And we have this grassroots art activism background, and we bring that to our clients. And so that really helped their business significantly. And they also only worked with advocacy organizations, anybody that did anything about advocacy. This one was a specialization. They specialize in wellness and fitness places. And they also had that last copy in italic, but we also believe in cheat days and are open to all industries. So I love that they're saying, they're relating it back to their expertise. So cheat days is a word that's used in like fitness, right? Or in wellness, but they're saying because we use those cheat days to do other industries. So it doesn't stop clients from working with you if you word it like that. So the last one, we are communications. So another client who didn't really know how to specialize, we ended up saying they're a communications design studio, which is generic, but they specialize in doing creative sprints. So that was more of a process thing. So they spent a lot of time with teams, having them collaborate together in short amount of times to develop ideas. And then they worked with in-house innovation teams. So that was their specialization. It wasn't necessarily by an industry, but by who they worked for and what they did. Oh, I didn't write this one down. There's one I just found that I love too, but I'm going to do another presentation for Fly female founders that's similar to this, where I'm going to present more examples. And that's my book. And now I'm going to take questions.
So there were a couple of questions in the chat. Let's see if I can scroll down.
Also, I'm welcome to arguments. Like I like to argue. So if you disagree with what I said, let's have a battle.
Let's start with Danielle. Go ahead.
I knew you were going to come to me. First of all, this was great. Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
I think you were one of my last like in-person Fly Female Founders things. What, like 2019 maybe?
Yeah,
something like that.
That was a fun talk. I liked the audience there. It was great.
So I am a copywriter.
Okay.
And so I take a little umbrage with not hiring a writer to help you with your positioning.
Yeah.
Not just because it's what I do, but I feel, and in my expertise, you are too close to your own brand to see it from your client's perspective. And so often you need someone outside to come in and say, this is what you're sending out in the world, and that's not what you actually want to be saying.
But is that a writer, or is that could be that you're also a strategist and you're not just a writer?
I am. I'm a little.
So I think that's the difference. Like
I'm working.
Yes, that's what I do too. Yeah. So that's different. I'm not saying if you have a writer that's also a strategic thinker and is looking at work holistically, absolutely. But even just the language, I think they should take a first shot at it, just to infuse some words that they feel comfortable with. Because if they end up with language that is not what they would say naturally, it does not sound as authentic. And so they don't memorize it because it's not authentic to them. I'm not denigrating writers by any means, but I think you're possibly a different kind of writer. And I just want my clients to believe in the words that they're saying.
And actually, Danielle has a process in which she digs that out of people. So
yeah. So then you're not just a writer.
I mean, I'm not just a writer, but I was just, for the sake of this argument, I was putting on that.
That's why I figured if Emily said, we'll argue, I'd put you up there first. Did
you have a question there, or just wanted to talk about my denigrating writers?
No. It was just because you said I'm willing to argue, and then I had put in the chat, like, I don't know if I agree with that comment, but
yeah. Hey, and also, I think it's great that you disagree. Like, I honestly think you don't have, I have a certain point of view. You might not agree with it, and that's cool. Like you have to find, if you're working with consultants, you're working with anybody, you have to find somebody that believes in what you believe in, right? We all have different beliefs, and that's cool. I think what I'm believing is right, and I'll defend it till I die. But I'm always growing and learning and changing my opinions as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's cool.
So Colette, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, Emily. Thanks for today. So
Thank
we're
you.
a small creative agency up in northern Minnesota, and I was just kind of curious what you would recommend for us to show more metrics and more ROI. Basically, after the creative is done, we have partners in kind of the marketing services realm, but what we could do to help, sell our services to say, our creative has a strategy behind it to help increase those sales.
Okay, so to get ROI, is the first thing you have to do is at the very beginning of the relationship. You have to ask this question. It's a two-part question. How do you measure success?
Okay.
And when do you measure success? The when is really important. So first the how. If they say, oh, we don't, a lot of clients will say, I don't know. Then what you do, you become a strategist and an advisor, and you say, I'm an expert in this industry. Here's how my other clients measure success. So already you're being advisory by saying, yeah, you don't know, but I know, this is what I do. Right? But the how is really important too. Or, I'm sorry, the when, because then you put it in your calendar. So it might be a year from now. It might be a year from launch. It might be right after the event, registration's finished. Whatever it is, ask them when, put it in your calendar. You have to put it in your calendar. And then it's called follow-up, which most designers, like once they're done with a project, like I'm done, I'm going to the next project, I'm sick of that client, and they move on.
Mm-hmm.
You actually should call them whenever they tell you to call them. First of all, you should always call them anyway to reconnect for new business, and then call them and say, hey, this is when you told me you were going to measure success. Can I hear some of the stories?
Love it.
And so the first thing is following up. Now, there are going to be clients that say, well, I can't tell you these numbers. They're confidential.
Mm-hmm.
I completely get that. You can say, can we give percentages roughly? I don't even have to use your name, like percentage of increase, right? So you could do it more anonymously in a way that still sounds like success. Testimonials is not success. So testimonials are subjective. And if you can't get ROI, then get testimonials. They're always good to have anyway, but I'd rather have ROI. And I'd like those front and center. Those are more important than all the gobbledygook that you guys say.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to my favorite site, one of my clients, Memo Productions, their site is, I think, Memo New York. I don't know what it is. He just puts his metrics right up front, like on the first page. I love it. One of his metrics, which I don't know if he's still using, is he worked with restaurants for a long time. And his metrics was that the clients, most of the restaurants he worked with, 99% of them were still in business after 2 years. Now, you can't take credit for that necessarily, but he did, because how many restaurants actually last 2 years? So he contributed to that. So what designers, a lot of times they don't want to get the metrics because they feel like they can't own them.
Mm-hmm.
You can you can just say, I'm so proud of my clients. We collectively did this, or I helped them achieve their goals, right? So, it's not your metric, it's their metric you're just sharing.
Yep. Wonderful. Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have a question? Laura?
I have a quick question. So I have a social media and creative agency. I've worked in many different industries, lots of different things, from content creation, writing, email, you name it, like we do it. And my goal this year is scaling, and I have a really aggressive goal. I know I have to get more refined on what I do, and then like the internal conflict I have is that, it's your client, you should be doing it, kind of thing. So how, what degree of specialization makes sense in this kind of situation, if it's even enough context?
Yeah, I don't know if it's enough context, but I would say to you, it's defining your no first. What do you not do? Right. So because just because a client asks for it doesn't mean you should do it.
Right.
Right. So there should be, I'm a big believer. In my book, I spend a whole chapter on qualification factors. So you might start there, is what's a qualified client?
Okay.
And there's a lot of factors. Most designers say a qualified client is anybody that pays me.
No, that's not
Or usually the two factors are they're paying me a lot of money. There's three factors. They pay me a lot of money. they're a really nice firm, or that's a cool project. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm looking, does it fit your business model? Is it within your positioning? Price is obviously important. How many stakeholders, how many decision makers? What's the aggravation factor? So you might want to start there first. You don't need to, and also just being comfortable saying no. I think many designers have real challenges with being people pleasers, and they never turn down any work. And it's okay to turn down work. It really is. Even during bad times, even during COVID, we could turn down work.
We actually, I think I got like 3 or 4 the week between Christmas and New Year's requests from Google searches, which were totally not in my ballpark because they just looked for graphic design. So what we do is we share them in the Creatives Roundtable. If someone has something they can't do, someone else can do it. And it's great because you don't have to turn it down. You can say, I can recommend this person. And I think that, you know, you're, as you said, getting to know your friends, they like the recommendations, but they might come back to you then for something bigger, better that you can do because you were honest with them and said what you can do.
Exactly. I mean, some of my clients have said no to say the price was too low for me. Like, we have a minimum engagement of this, or we're better suited for these kinds of projects. And then they stay in touch with them. They will come back to you when they're ready. And they'll be like recommending you. And the other thing is the referral quality, right? So a lot of times, if you don't know who you are, your clients don't know who you are. And so when they refer you, they don't know what to say about you. So they're referring you to everybody. But if they say, you should work with Danielle because she's not just a writer, she's an incredibly strategic thinker, right? So clients will then send better messages out about you in the world, and you'll get better qualified leads. I was reading the notes. I love the person that works for an association for ice cream vendors. That's a great client. I hope you get some barter.
You get any, Kara?
It's not as exciting as it sounds, actually.
But definitely you should get some barter. I'm just saying.
But yeah, to your comment earlier, there is an association for everything.
There is. Yeah. It's crazy.
So we'll take one more question. Or not? No one? Okay, Genevieve?
Hi, thanks so much for today. Wow, what a great way to start the year off. I'm a narrative strategist, so it is that, like, I have the writing background and storytelling, journalism, that sort of thing.
I love that wording, narrative. That's good.
Thank you. And so one of my goals is to get more specialized this year as I try to market myself and build my client base. So just a little bit, I wonder if you could talk more of the steps that you take from going from that generalist all the way up to that innovator. Is that like, I see that it is gradual and that you can't necessarily hop over, each level. But should you give yourself like a 1 year, 2 year timeline? Like,
oh, absolutely. I'm a big believer in timelines. Yeah.
Okay.
And have a plan. Like, what can I do to get to that next level? Doesn't mean it means hiring. Sometimes it means hiring because you can't do all of it. Right. It doesn't always mean hiring, but it often means hiring. It also often means no, learning to say no. But just think about the baby steps that you take, and just focus on those steps, immediate quick wins, and then nothing's going to happen overnight. I think the other thing is we all have less patience these days, and we want things to happen overnight. Whenever you reposition, it takes good 2 years. It's just like new business, right? From when you meet when you meet a client to when they turn into a client, it's always 2 years or more. And so new business is not about immediate quick wins. Neither is positioning. It's about just slow churn and burn, getting the work done, doing the work that needs to do, which means spending time in your business. Most of us don't spend enough time on our own business.
Very true.
So I really think you should do a business planning retreat once a year. I strongly recommend that. You know, I even do it for myself. My daughter leads mine. She's really mean to me. And it was her idea to write the book. And she put a plan in action. She told me I had to do it. I did it. You know, it was a project, right? So I needed somebody, even though I am great at that for my clients, I'm not so good for my own self. So she's my business consultant. you might need somebody else, or it might be your spouse, it could be your lover, it could be anybody. It could be this accountability group, right? Maybe you meet the two of you to talk about doing a business planning retreat. You also should look at it every quarter. Where is my business now? Have I done what I needed to do? If I didn't, why? Right? Like, because you want to know why. Like, why didn't I do this? What stopped me from doing this? Did I fight too many fires today? Did I not say no enough? Did I not hire because I got too scared? You know, whatever. So always looking at I always look at my business on a quarterly basis as well. I think it helps a lot.
Well, I'm going to call it because I have an appointment. That's always the way. Thank you very much. As usual, this was fantastic. I will be sending everyone out all your contact information and the link to your book. And would you also give us information on, you said you're now doing a service where you help people?
Oh yeah, so I'm doing this actually in conjunction with my daughter, who's now, I'm trying to get her to join my business. I'm not doing so well at it, but eventually she will. And so she's doing this, she's leading this project where she does, most of my clients, when I work with them, they agree with what I'm recommending, but then they don't do the work of the research. They just don't spend the time, like, who are the where are the associations? Where can I write copy? You know, where can I write thought leadership? Where can I speak? And so we now do the research they'll pick 1 or 2 industries that they want to specialize in, and we'll do the deep dive to find those places and identify like the top 30 places and then prioritize them by which ones we think have the most opportunity.
Right. I think that's something some people would be interested in, so I can get that.
Yeah, no. Because I ended up finding out my clients that was the one thing that they just never did. None of my clients ever did. They loved the idea, but they just didn't do it because it takes a lot of time.
Sure.
So now I offer that service through my daughter.
That's great. That's great.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
But I'm always pivoting. Like, that's trends, right? Like, what do my clients need? Is this something I can provide that I like to do? How can I expand what I'm doing and still be strategic and advisory, right? So I'm always thinking, like, what do I do with my business? I'm growing constantly.
Practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was good seeing everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve. By the way, I just want to say hi to my friend Steve. Hi.
Hey, Emily, good to see you.
It's good seeing you. We should see each other more often.
Let's talk soon.
Yeah. It's good seeing everybody. Thanks. And Nancy, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Emily. I appreciate you coming. Bye.
And I'll see you guys maybe in a few weeks for the next one at
Fly
Female Founders.
Fly Female Founders. Yep. I'll send it in the recap email. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.